about here. Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. How are the masses? Okay. I'll take that as an affirmative. John, you want to start those on this side? Got a couple of handouts going down both sides of the table. I think before I start, I would like to maybe offer a toast, if you all would toast with me, to the memory of Dr. Fred Ruda, who was a great colleague, a great person, of good spirit and good nature on his way out the door. I wish that we all would be such fascinating characters as we leave Fort Hays State University, and to Fred's memories I toast. And then we'll have a moment of silence, please. I think Fred represented kind of the best of what Fort Hays State University is about, for being a long-term faculty member and department chair. I know that he will be missed in the College of Education and Technology and really campus-wide. He was just a damn good soul. He was a good person. So, anyway, Rob, for you and your crew, I'm sorry for your loss. He was a good guy. So let's talk about faculty morale. Now that we've touched on that happy topic, eh? A real morale builder, but a necessary part of the human experience, I guess. You're getting a couple of documents here, and I guess I'll lay some foundation for what these documents are in case you haven't been involved with them at all. The single-page document is the evaluation that Faculty Senate authorized for last year, and this was a faculty evaluation of department chairs. Okay, this went to all full-time and part-time faculty last year, and there were response rate of 44%, which is actually fairly good. And you can kind of look at the distribution of where people see concerns. Okay? Most of the questions here really dealt with the chair's relationship with the department. I'm sorry, the faculty's relationship with the department chair. Okay? And there were, there's always been concerns about, well, I feel like faculty are picking on me, but it's really meant as an evaluation, an administrator evaluation. And I think you have to take it at that. We provided results to you based on the departmental level. I don't know whether that was something that you felt like you had to act on or did act on last year. I think some departments probably did, and many probably did not, and that's okay. Okay. So the second document is the document that Faculty Senate authorized for this year, and this really is more about workload. This is really more about working conditions, although there may be questions in there about chairs and deans. There are, and I know some of the comments specifically address that. So they're really two different purposes, but I think that's okay too. I think what we're looking for is probably areas of convergence out of these two things. I don't know whether anybody's had a chance to just a little bit of time departmental organization. And maybe we just won't be able to get there today either. I don't know. My goal was if we could find some salient points not related to the topic of salaries, that I think we'd probably be doing very well. I think what I'd like to do is maybe give everybody a chance to look through it, because I'm sure some folks looked through it and some folks didn't look through it, and maybe digress to another topic just briefly while you look through that. One of the strategic initiatives that I think is probably going to be gaining some ground over the next 6 months is some sort of adjunct orientation training, something in that area. Obviously, many departments use adjuncts heavily, and some departments use a few, and some departments don't use them at all. Nonetheless, with the burgeoning virtual college that we have, most departments or many departments have had to turn to more and more adjuncts. I do not see, we've got, I guess Paul is with us, Rob, you're with us. You guys obviously deal with workload issues of adjuncts, part-times, and full-times folks. from what I see, it does not appear to me that we are going to be reducing the number of adjuncts that we have in the near future, based on what we've heard. Paul, would you kind of agree with that, as you have a mouthful? I'll wait for you.
Well, yeah, I would agree with it. I mean, obviously, our need for classes continues to go up. We were, yeah, I mean, in virtual college classes, we were up more than 10% this year compared to the previous year. So our need keeps going up, and we haven't been authorized really to increase full-time faculty. So
Right.
that's the alternative.
And in education?
Yeah, and it's not even going to be, I suspect, the next couple of years, it's going to creep up, the number that we use. It's going to be a jump, just because in each case, all three departments are planning on new programs that they're doing. And in each case, well, maybe one case, we get a new faculty member, but the others, it's just going to be built on top of everything else that's going on. We're at a point right now, college-wide, we're about 65-35. 65% by core, 35% of our stuff is done by adjuncts, and that 35 is going to head towards 40 in the next year or two. 40 or higher.
And I know you've got, obviously in Justice Studies, you guys used adjuncts extensively in that program as well.
When I left there a couple of years ago, I know we had crossed the line to where it was 55-45. We were doing less than half of the courses we taught by core, more than 50%. And I assume it's either at the same level or worse now.
Right. You know, I think there's an obvious concern. It's concern that, I mean, we can state here, it's been stated other places, but the minute you become so heavily invested in adjuncts, you really have to keep an eye on quality. Okay? I'm sure that, you know, those of you that employ a lot of adjuncts probably hold your breath every semester and hope that, you know, God, I hope there's no serious problems. You know, you may get a new adjunct and you don't know, pardon me, what the history is with that person, and you really wonder, is this going to come off okay? And you're going to be disappointed in that process as well. Greg, I know you probably have more adjuncts than any other chair on campus. I would just about imagine, maybe with the exception of teacher ed. You guys might have more in teacher ed. But I'm sure there's not a semester goes by where you don't have a slew of issues out of one or more adjunct faculty members. And that takes up a great deal of your time. There may not be a great way of getting around it. It's just really part of the job, an unfortunate part of it. And trying to fix problems midway through the semester is not nearly as attractive as trying to get them done up front. So kind of in recognition of that need, I think Larry is probably interested in moving forward on some sort of adjunct training, adjunct orientation, some sort of fuller scale program, university-wide. Again, the focus here is on a university-wide orientation. You know, from some of the HR functionality could easily be dropped into this. You know, attributes of teaching excellence, quality perspective. You know, there's going to be just a litany of topics that I think probably could be addressed in this sort of project that we're putting together. And I don't know, Larry, do you want to speak to any of this at this point? My hope was to maybe get a few names to put on the table of folks that have major adjunct programs and bring them into the fold.
I guess just to elaborate briefly on Chris's remarks, this is not new for me. I've just been with this, and that started a project probably 7, 8, maybe even 10 years ago in terms of doing something productive with faculty support, adjunct faculty support, and now the word of the day, engagement. And engagement's always been there. I've usually said it in different ways, saying to the department chairs and faculty, making it part of the department, making them feel that they have a sense of ownership in the program, make them feel that they have some support services available to them. Put that all into the word engagement, but the whole idea of providing support that you have on campus and faculty on campus should be a part of that. There are a number of schools around the country who have created institutional solutions, which you alluded to. project that I should have started 5 or 6 years ago is getting underway, and we'll be stealing probably from some of those, not because they've been obviously the results of the issue. The results have been very good if you pay any attention to what they're doing. I would also say this, I guess, make a point of clarification. You know, when Ed stands up there and says 90-10 or 92-8 or whatever, I'll say it again. Hopefully get back to the faculty. He's talking about on-campus classes, saying that 90% of our on-campus classes are taught by full-time core faculty, 10% or less are taught by adjuncts. With regard to distance education world in China, that's not even close. But faculty still get that confused in the minds for whatever reasons. I appreciate it if you can clarify some of that. And many of you have, even with smaller departments like Jill or whatever, have had some support systems for faculty in the past. Certainly, you know, Rose Arndt in sociology, you still got some of that certainly in place and probably added to it. The only problem with that is, and I appreciate it very much that you've done that, is that it's uneven across campus. Some adjuncts are getting more support than others. Some things are happening in some departments aren't happening in other departments. So it's time for an institutional solution to the whole thing. I would also say, you know, you can say what you want about adjuncts, but there's some pretty damn good teachers out there among your adjunct core. I think part of the problem is you probably haven't built up an inventory of adjuncts, so as we grow, we can reach into that pool and pull them out at any time. When we have, as Paul said, demand for additional classes and capacity and all the rest. We need to do more of that, but to do that right, we need to have a system of support and engagement for those folks to make all that happen. In addition, and great to maybe speak to this as well, but you know, sometimes I've had as many phone calls about full-time on-campus faculty teaching overload courses in terms of being responsive as I've had about adjuncts. So I'm not saying one's better than the other, but I am saying there are problems that support systems and policies and procedures and other kinds of things we need to take care of, which is the next project in line, updating the policies and procedures for virtual college for everybody, adjunct on campus as well as adjunct. So that's in the mix as well. And I'm going to take this moment, I was going to use it here, but I'll take this moment to say this. You cannot make them feel a part of your department or your program unless you want to, unless you care, and unless you have department meetings, and some of those meetings may actually have to be online, Skype, whatever you use, bring them in every once in a while. And also I'll say this, let me say it again sometime. Not every department has meetings every month. If you don't, I don't know how you communicate with faculty even on campus. So not having department meetings, in my mind, is a bad thing. It needs to be improved. I'm not saying have a meeting just for the sake of having a meeting, but I talked to new faculty yesterday. I talked to faculty senate. And the general word is some departments have plenty of department meetings and they learn things, and other departments don't have any department meetings at all. If you're going to get communication going, if you're going to overcome that disconnect between what's learned in faculty senate and what should be brought back to your department, you have to have department meetings. So if I sound like I'm preaching, I am. Faculty senators cannot get information that's going on in faculty senate back to the faculty members or colleagues of the department, generally speaking, without a department meeting. There may be some other way to do it, but it seems to me to be a little bit silly not to have it on the agenda as a faculty department meeting item. So I'm encouraging, using this moment, to encourage that department meetings occur at least every third. It's hard for me to believe that there isn't enough new happening in a discipline or a department area that it doesn't, within 30 days you have nothing, and so no meeting. But if you get it on the schedule, and you don't need it, you can always cancel it. But what I'm hearing from faculty senate and what I'm hearing from new faculty is that they're not there. Now, it's like the 6th grade, person stays after school and the whole class stays after because somebody chewed gum. Not all of you are in that boat. Some of you are having your department meetings, items are on the agenda, things are being talked talked about. Adjuncts are being brought into the process, and you're to be commended for all of that. But the ones that aren't, I'm only suggesting to you, if you're going to make adjuncts feel supported, if you're going to make them feel a part of the department, you got to have department meetings. Okay, I'll shut up.
That was a stimulating sermon, Reverend Gould. Yes, very nice. I think the outcome that I'm seeking here is maybe some names of folks that would serve on a task force. You know, we all need more meetings, as Scott Robson eloquently noted to me that morale would go up if we had less meetings. I don't disagree with you. You're absolutely right. So I guess I'm not necessarily on bent knee, and I'm not going to get on bent knee for y'all. I'm not going to run for y'all either. But I am going to ask for some volunteers. In the absence of volunteers, of course, we'll send the collection plate around, and we'll pick names out of the hat. So would anybody like to serve on such a task force? Commit your service, your precious service time. Scott, you know, I'm looking at you, but I'm not really thinking you necessarily want to be on there. I know that. Greg, welcome. Thank you, Brother Weisenborn. Appreciate it. Okay. The task force will be, I guess, kind of a formative task force, probably investigating other institutions that do this. You know, sociology and social work probably would have a very valuable role in there, because you guys have done some adjunct stuff for a long, long time in terms of training and what Rose has done in continuation of that. So sharing best practices and at least getting some ideas on the table, I guess, Brett. Okay. Yes, Joe, you would do it too. Thank you. That is really, you know, 4 is really more than what I was looking for even. So I thank you very much for those of you who didn't volunteer. I'm sure there'll be other opportunities at another point in time.
Chris knows this. All the deans have free read notebooks with gaps available for this very task. But I would say you start with Florida State College in Jacksonville. They've got one hell of a model. They've grown to 2,000 off campus, almost 60,000. Talking about a lot of students, obviously, so they need the support system. They've done a very good job. So
Florida State
College in Jacksonville.
Okay.
It used to be Florida Community College, but
Okay.
they needed 4-year program.
Okay, very good. Well, I think we probably even had more coverage on that topic than what I anticipated. You know, Larry's got a good point. Police have department meetings. Okay, we all understand that. Thank you, Reverend Gould. In terms of faculty morale, as you've had a chance to look through this, what are your thoughts? What are there some salient takeaways that our faculty are expressing? Something that ought to be done at a more systemic level?
It's always true to call it trend. We have some trend data.
No trend date on either one.
I see this almost like, you know, equate it to a faculty, you know, Gavin made this point too, you equate this to some faculty evaluation where you've got all the questions, but at the end of the day, we look at number 1, effectiveness as, you know, and they got a 4.6. That's
Right.
pretty good at the end. You go through all this and that's nice, but you get down to number 16. If you could do it all, you know, again, would you? The highest category is strongly agree, second is agree, the 2 weakest categories are the disagreeing ones. At the end of the day, you got 72% saying, you know,
They don't
agree or
regret their
strongly
decision.
agree, they had a chance to take their position again. And, you know, a lot of it, that tells you everything you need to know right there. Your strongly disagree is 1 in 20, which is nothing.
As you would expect.
You wonder, in many ways, it's nice you do a little morale survey, but I think maybe some people were assuming this was going to uncover all kinds of hidden problems. Question 16 tells me there's not a whole hell of a lot of hidden problems.
The hidden problems actually come out pretty strongly in the comments section. I don't know whether you've had a chance to look at those or not, but unfortunately, there's identification of personnel in there, and I'm not, you know, can understand why people put it in there. I can understand why it's inappropriate too as well. Anyway, I guess maybe that's enough to say about that. I guess other reflections on this. Do we have a morale issue or not? if we don't have a morale issue, then why did Steve Kitsis have the presence that he had? Or was he just a lone wolf out there on the countryside prairie howling at the moon?
I don't know that I would argue for we have one or don't have one. From everything that we saw, I think we need to look at the communication climate on campus.
Yeah.
Because I think that was an issue that I saw kind of come up in what's the flow of communication, who feels like they can actually say anything. I heard expressions of fear about participating in the discussion, and that to me is something to address, and sure that may be linked to morale, but I know, in the snapshot of, we have one data point, so,
Scott, you and I went through the same grad classes. First thing that I learned at KU grad school was the best predictor of employee satisfaction is your relationship with your immediate supervisor. And the biggest influence in that is going to be the communication climate between you and your direct supervisor. You learn that probably the first day of class too. That's just pounded in you at KU. And you don't, in the faculty survey, the faculty senate survey, you don't get a real good sense of the communication strategies that are employed. In this one, I think you get a much better sense of that because it is directly related to chair, communication, leadership abilities, decision-making abilities, etc., and compliance with mission, etc. And that's really kind of why I fused these two things together. The faculty senate survey really gives you kind of the bird's eye, broad view of I like it here, I don't like it here so well, but this gives you more nuts and bolts details as to what the thoughts are about the way the department is led. Now, I'm not sure that drills or that rolls right up to the level of provost or president or dean or anybody else, but I'm not sure that it isn't either. Okay? I think it's probably something we need to take maybe a more detailed look at, the communication climate that are created, not just at the departmental level, but at the university level. Okay? Scott, do you see a key takeaway other than we need to look at our communication strategies?
Well, we've talked about or looked at, we're talking about general compensation. And then when you move down to workload, I would say it's no surprise to any of us, we have a little bit of a disconnect over let's push our scholarly agendas. And I constantly hear across campus, I feel the same way, that I don't have enough time available for my work, scholarly work.
Right.
I'm in a department where I'm one of 4 people on the tenure track. And every single person is, they have too much going on in teaching, or it seems like every year I have some sort of crisis come up and everybody ends up teaching overload. But, that's a real concern. Yeah. I see that on here, and okay, that's not directly related to compensation, but that's workload and time. And when we go down to item number 7, there we are at number 8 under that, time available for scholarly work. Very dissatisfied and somewhat dissatisfied. We've got 26, 28%, 15% are neutral. To me, if you want to move beyond compensation, that's a key indicator to be looking at for what are the opinions of people on campus.
Okay. Some people are going to complain about workload anyway, and I'm not really trying to be dismissive here. Some people are just frankly lazy, and their version of overworked may not mesh with reality, but I know that's clearly a widespread concern. There's a rub to this. Some of those folks, I can't say many, some of those folks teach virtual college overload classes. Okay? Some of those folks teach 2 virtual college overload classes. If there was a more systemic decision made about limitations on teaching overload virtual college classes, that would probably spark, maybe a pitchfork revolt across campus by some faculty, perhaps. I don't know, more than one overload a semester. I'm assuming per semester, right, Gene?
Yeah, in general. And when we're talking about virtual college
Yeah.
overload, we're not talking about the stuff
Well,
in the department that's unpaid.
Okay, we have unpaid overloads as well.
Or internships.
Right.
Or
You guys have studios that, I don't know how you structure those, paid overloads.
paid overloads.
Mhm.
Researchers and publishers on campus. I don't think you can just say that you're going to restrict overloads and expect necessarily that you're going to get greater productivity.
Mhm.
It can occur it's pretty much individual. We have
Right.
kind of a rule that if you want overloads, you have to be up to speed with your research or you don't get to do those.
Right?
So, it's kind of a touchy issue. I know some faculty, you could give them half-time, they wouldn't do anything, you know? So, it's not a real simple solution, just by restricting overloads.
But are we talking 2 faculty members or?
We're not talking two faculty members. It's,
More than 50%.
I don't think more than 50%.
Oh, 1, 2. That's your, that was your, I'm sorry, 1, 1, what's your question?
Yeah.
Would we place it
About
somewhere
one,
around
did you say?
10% maybe, 15%?
I'd guess around 15%.
Total cost.
How about teach
Teach
one
at least
extra?
one,
Teach at least one.
probably 40 to 50%. Teach at least one over. The kind you're thinking of it.
Yeah, Gavin?
I can only speak for my own department, but anybody who's on a pay overload is doing it because they want it. They're not being forced to do it. And it's interesting that the people who are doing that tend also to be producing everywhere else, and it's a non-issue.
Okay. Or do they complain about the workload?
Boy, everybody's going to complain all the time, but
Okay.
seriously, no. No.
And I'd say that's true about
Okay.
the unpaid, you know, in the department stuff, people who take on producing in all areas. So, at least in our department.
That's
There's an
good.
interesting statement in here that Kevin was talking about, that 35 out of the 48 that responded or whatever, basically are dissatisfied. So I mean, the ones that respond to these kinds of things are the dissatisfied ones in many cases. That's not wrong, but generally the results you're getting are from people that are going to be unhappy or I just started unhappy or whatever it may be. The ones you're talking about are probably just more about doing their work and not happy about the overload, but
They're more dissatisfied with having to answer surveys.
Sorry.
there's a million one. You have to-
Faculty Senate wanted both of these, sorry.
So I find it's hard to believe that 40% of our faculty would teach paid over while they're making the grade and everything else. Really, I mean, unless they really.
I'll
Which
go
says to
back
me
to
that I
Kevin's
think-
comment. Ed Hammond, Larry Gould, you name it, nobody's ever said you have to teach an overload. In fact, I didn't.
No, but why would they? They want the money.
They want the money.
That's a striking.
What if we align our institutional resources with research? Would we have a similar question? Would we have a similar dialogue? You have too many people researching, and getting overloaded, doing too much research. Just a question for you.
It's a good problem to have with.
That's right.
You do realize we do have sort of a two, maybe 3-tier research set of faculty on campus too as well. I mean, there's the hard.
I'm being.
I know where you're going, and I just want to take that into consideration.
Reflective.
There's a hardcore group of about 40 that do the scholarship of discovery, and you know, John Heinrichs and a variety of folks that are going to want to do it. There's another 40 or 50 that moan and groan about not having enough time to do it, but when I look at the record, they're not doing it anyway, which kind of gets to your point to some extent that you made earlier, Carl. And then there's another group that says, this is a teaching institution. I've been able to integrate the scholarship of engagement, the scholarship of teaching and learning, my responsibilities in research, so to speak, into the work that I'm doing. So I've tried in various ways over the last 30 years, even as a faculty member, to figure out how to blend those groups together and make everybody happy with regard to research. I can't do it. Maybe somebody else can get it done, but the hardcore 40, the softcore 40 are afraid of the hardcore 40, establishing rules and regulations and more requirements for research to be very honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
It comes out back in Senate over the years.
Nothing wrong with being less or less. That's just who we are.
And putting money, elsewhere is what you suggested, I think. Would that make a difference? My own impression is it wouldn't at this point after, 20 years as an administrator, 10 years full-time faculty member, but it might. But I don't think
I may be just too idealistic. I think there's data in here that you can look at, and maybe there's some influence that can be had at the departmental level, or we could just set it aside and say, yeah, that's another lost opportunity for us to really think about some sort of systemic change at the institutional level. I'm just optimistic enough or idealistic enough to believe that maybe there is something else that could be done at the departmental level, at the college level, at the university level, to make this a more inviting environment for our faculty members. Okay, we all know, because we are too, faculty members are underpaid here. That's no big mystery. I personally tried to exclude that from this discussion because it's a reality, and that's probably not going to change. Okay, but maybe there is something else that can be done at the departmental level, to stimulate morale. Okay, so I guess that's kind of the purpose for what I want to talk about here.
Chris, I think one thing that's dangerous about surveys like this, though, is it's easy to confuse something that is perception and accepting it as fact. 55% of the people say we're underpaid, therefore we're underpaid. No, what this asks about is perception.
Right.
If we were to go to Columbia, where the low end's making $120,000, and you gave this survey, I bet you'll find 50% say they feel that they're underpaid. So I mean,
But we're really underpaid, Rob.
but you understand
We
that
really mean it.
accepting this like it's somehow, if it comes out 50, 60%, that it's factual and that's what, no, it's perception. And this could be turned into somebody using it as proof of something. It's not proof of anything.
So let the record state that Rob Scott feels like that the pay levels in the College of Education are all appropriate and rational.
No, I'm saying that no matter how much people make here, or it's Columbia, or it's Harvard, or it's wherever, if you ask people these questions,
I agree.
you'll probably get similar responses.
I agree.
Whether you're making 150 grand or 50 grand.
I agree. I'm with you. That's why I said salary is what it is. That's not an area we can change.
Let me add a point, though. Chris and I don't disagree too much, but we disagree slightly.
All right. Go ahead.
Andy needs to turn the camera off for a second.
Seriously?
The kids' Hammond thing, I summarize in one word. Somebody heard me say this. It's share. I look about everything I needed to learn in life. I learned in kindergarten. Well, sharing is something that kids are getting at, but wasn't saying it very well. There are resources that can improve our salary levels. At the same time, we're in a pay-for-performance system. And I know AAUP wants a 10% raise, or kids have suggested a 14% raise, because Ed got a 14% raise. Ed didn't get a 14% raise, by the way. 10% of that was market adjustment. We got a 4% raise like everybody else. But the state of Kansas felt they weren't going to be able to attract a new president to Wichita State University unless they increased the salaries, and so they had to do it for 3 presidents and now 3 others. So you get caught up in all of these complexities and contingencies as well. I have no doubt that we can raise salaries at Florida State University given the resources that we have. But we still have to figure out a way to make sure that the resources in those FTE slots are not, at this particular point in time, provided the people who some of you have just talked about here are not doing their job is what it comes down to. And I think you as department chairs and directors would feel the same way. Also keep in mind some of those low salaries are a result of that pay-for-performance system. I know a guy in Elmer's department over there in biology who's now retired, who retired at $22,000 and had been here for almost 30 years. Why did he retire at $22,000? I won't say the name. You probably know the history if you know him. He has some folks in the department. It's because the guy just didn't do anything. Poor teaching evaluations, no research, you name it. and no pay for performance. I mean, several years at 0%, and they didn't go up. And so guess what happened? When he left, there's an FTE line with $22,000. Now this is a while back, but really those kinds of dynamics create some of the issues that we're dealing with. I just wish, Ed would sit down and maybe do a full-scale institutional analysis of all of this and take a look at it. And to some degree, we did that about 12 years ago, summer session, 14 years ago now, I guess. We need to do it again. We haven't done it, but a lot of it could be taken care of, I think, in terms of just sharing some of the resources that your people and yourselves have generated through China, distance education, and that's primarily it. You're not earning anything here on campus, folks. If you think somehow the on-campus environment is generating revenue streams, the revenue streams generated are probably the same revenue streams that were there in 1981. When I came to Fort Hays in 81, there were 5,100 people. Now I'm here and there's what, 4965. We just have not grown at all on campus. The cost of education has gone up. There's no new revenue streams coming in. We've done some smoke and mirrors stuff with camps. We put a soccer team together, 2 soccer teams together, and brought in 60 students and raised the numbers a little bit more. But as I said to Chris the other day in terms of a webinar we're doing, demographics is not necessarily destined for Fort Hays State University. For a lot of rural institutions, demographics is destined. They're sticking around, hanging around, the same old crew coming in the door, so to speak. But we did different things. We went to China. We created distance education opportunities and whatever, and so a little bit better environment. That was done by the people, though, that we're talking about, and there's resources there to share and to incentivize and to make some things happen. We're just not doing a good job. We should have, and that's where the improvement stuff comes in. I think.
Yeah, Carl?
My comment on this. I think he is correct that response of not being underpaid is a perception. But if 50% of the faculty have that perception, then the response is not to say we're wrong. The response is to use factual information, such as a wage survey. What is comparable pay to the market that these people would be able to compete in?
Right.
And it's not just a 5 or 6 school peer. That's not enough. You need a large sample, and it needs to be by rank and discipline, that kind of thing. You're going to find this. Some are overpaid, some are paid appropriately, and some are underpaid. But that's the better response, is to say, here's what the facts are. Now, it also is individual specific, just because they're ranked and disciplined. That means it's productive faculty member, so there still has to be further adjustments to that.
Sure.
I would agree with you, Carl. You just can't compare yourself to Pittsburgh and Florida. On the other hand, Ed was right when he said the regions have had difficulty finding the right peers. We used to be with Central Oklahoma. Central Oklahoma now is huge compared to Fort Hays State. Salisbury University, which used to be Salisbury State University, in terms of basically the labor force, in terms of the economy in Maryland, it's just changed, and it's a lousy peer now. So finding the right peers is a tough one too.
Well, the couple of 100 master's level institution probably a pretty close to find.
Yeah, right. And those are two.
Other takeaways from this. I guess what I'm hearing is communication, workload issues. What else? Is there anything you personally plan to do about it?
Chris, I guess I would invoke the name of Steve Kitsis on this again. Granted that the Kitsis interchange kind of moved toward talking a lot about compensation. At the beginning, Steve was, you may remember that what stimulated this was his horror at the public presentation of the goals of education, or the goals of our activity of education. It was done so much in terms of trying to produce workers for the workforce.
Right.
If one were of a Marxist tint, you might you might think here that what is sometimes, I mean, what we are trying to do is even produce relatively low-cost workers for the workforce. And many of us, I think, share Steve's ideals about education being good for people contributing to society through their work and being compensated for it. But there's more to the liberal arts education than that. We are, all of us have many dimensions to our lives beyond just the making of the money, and a full-fledged liberal arts education should be aspiring to do all those things. Some of that is not communicated very, I mean, in public and perhaps within our more private conversations as well. I think that loss of some idealism has contributed to a decline in morale as well.
Okay, that makes sense. I think we all kind of assume lofty goals, as Paul's talking about, you know, within our discipline, our professions. But there's a reality. The reality is that there's kind of a commodification of at least the outcomes of higher education, and we hope that doesn't contaminate the process, more or less. Yeah. Good point.
I think one thing that also came out of the Kansas exchange was that there isn't a financial crisis, unfortunately, if there ever was. And I think, I'll speak for myself, I felt pressure in the last few years, ever since the economy tanked. Well, you know, the state's cutting things, and so you got to increase this, increase that, but no new resources, no new resources, no new resources. And then, it turns out, even if it's not a slush fund, we've got money, and it looks like we've had money all along. And so that gets back to what Larry was saying with sharing. Those who are teaching the courses, those who are creating the revenue, and like everything looks pretty much like it did, with the exception of hiring a lot of people. So I
That's a
think
good point.
Part of what my frustration would be, and perhaps just a system. But I didn't think the 50 million was very important, except to illustrate that there is no financial crisis at Fort Hays.
Quick comment. And I find this so interesting coming out of Jennifer's going to cringe here. I find this so interesting coming out of a guy that goes home at 1:25 in the afternoon, quite a few days per week, but feels that he's, But the point is, he found the information. The information is public information, and he was exactly right about part of what he was saying, the part that you're alluding to. I'm a little bit, I'll disagree with Gene just a little bit. Part of what we had to give back was required by the Kansas Board of Regents. It wasn't, even though we may have had the money on board, there's no way that Ed could say to 9 people sitting up there, well, we've got plenty of money, we're not giving you anything back. He had to give some things back because we were required to do so. Healthcare coverage went up, and they weren't going to take care of it. I mean, I go through a whole list of things. Again, I'm treading the line here between loyalty and disloyalty in terms of what I'm saying, but Ed has figured that out after 25 years. So that's part of his legacy, or my legacy, or whatever it is. So you're right, we were never in dire financial need, but at the same time, we still had to do some things that created some issues for us to deal with.
I guess one comment I'd make about all this then is, it seems like one of the questions that may be about morale is a perception of whether or not it's the things that matter for the money or the people on campus. And I think that's one of the things that needs to be addressed there.
I've heard that one too. What counts? Things that people.
And our constant comments about more, going to have to do more with less, I think has some of the faculty thinking they're actually doing more than they've done before. I've had faculty tell me that I'm asking them to do more things, I haven't really changed what I'm asking. You know, but I think they perceive that I am asking for more. You know, go make sure that, you know, the faculty go to the SRPs and some of the other kinds of things that we've been asking them to do since I first got here. They now see as a burden because we're doing more. And I don't know, I mean, I don't know if that's coming from this, you know, perception that we are all doing more with less or not. I'm not sure. Or maybe it's the aging of my department, moving away from, you know, non-tenured faculty to more tenured faculty. And then, if that's a problem, is there something that could be done to reinvigorate them afterwards, after that tenure process? That, you know, you get a list of committees and you say, well, here's a great place for a non-tenured faculty member. You don't go and say, here's a great place for close to retirement faculty members. It's not the way we ask it to, I don't know, just...
Don't they call that grad council?
Yeah.
Hey.
I'm sorry, it used to be that way. Used to be that way.
Speak up.
One of the other themes that I noticed that went along with compensation, that went along with the whole kids and season exchange, and it is the theme of respect. And I know a lot of faculty, they view compensation as a form of respect. You went to school each year doing all of these things. And I do, you know, I've never felt disrespected. I've always felt disrespected for days, but I know that a number of people, after that forum the other day, felt really disrespected. Like there was a lack of respect. And so I think that might have actually contributed, a lack of respect might have contributed to a potential amount of problem.
I would say my morale problem is I'm happy.
Half full. I just said half full, Tim.
Revisionist history, that's what I'll say. I've been around here long enough. There was a lot of revisionist history that occurred. You should feel that close to your heart as well. A lot of that strategic plan and Derek Green that we came up with.
You know, there's some messes a person doesn't mind cleaning up after. Anyway, it's been a good discussion.
Let me ask you this. I mean, I 110% agree with the communication team coming out of here. That's why I mentioned the department meeting thing. I think that's a tool for enhancement that needs to be improved. I'm trying to do what I can with First Coffee with the provost. There's other things I can do. I've missed some opportunities probably from time to time. But I do think coming out of here there is, to me anyway, this suggestion that we don't know what's going on in some cases. We need to know more about what's happening on campus. We need to understand the budget better, whatever. Of course, there's some people who don't care about the budget at all. We all know that. But I think generally speaking, more people want to know more about how the universities run, and that's called shared governance, faculty senate, and the public purpose of higher education, which has been, you've heard me say this, bled out of us by the legislature and the governor and a variety of business-oriented people, so to speak. You know, it's just basically, it's just for getting a job and not much else. Paul mentioned, and we're partly to blame for that. I mean, going to the legislature and going to the governor and going to the board of regents and saying we can help the workforce. We can help the workforce, but you can't forget the other part of it. I mean, I'm hoping that all of you are educating our students, whether they're on or off campus, to lead good lives and be good citizens and all of the other stuff. I know some folks laugh at that, but I mean, it's always been a part of my belief about what education is all about. We've been bled a great deal of that by this, as you're suggesting, this so-called financial crisis. And I'm not saying the economy of the state of Kansas wasn't bad 2, 3, 4 years ago, but it's definitely improving, and my expectation is you guys at Topeka turn around and start replenishing some of what was taken away. I don't know whether that will happen or not, but communication is a major
if you care to further discuss this, send me an email or catch me on Twitter, something like that.
Yeah,
Thank you all very. No, yeah, okay.
Just based on Gene's comment, because the issue that the university was never in financial trouble is a very positive thing for us to realize as employees of the institution and as department chairs. It's our responsibility to know what is taking place from a budgetary perspective as much as we can. And I'm caught, I say, Gene, just a little off guard, the university was never in trouble. That is true, but many of us stepped up at the department level to make sure the university maintained a financial health and solvency that was costly to the university in order to have a business continue, because we are a business that operates financially. So I guess I am glad, and from an administrative standpoint, for us to know that we were in pretty good shape compared to many of our peer institutions who had to have furloughs, layoffs, and so forth. But it was costly to us individually as some departments more than others, that we had to help that university maintain integrity. So it's not that we were never in trouble, because we were. We just had to clean up a little bit and cough up some money to help keep us in a good financial position. So, and I think that's important for faculty to be aware of, because they are benefiting from the financial solvency that exists at this university because of decisions that were made. And we can't overlook that. We can't let them assume any other position, which isn't really true. We need to let the truth be known out there. So.
Okay.
I would also say, during Chris's comment and feedback, many times I've said this in the last 20 years. You know, we've talked about a junior chair workshop and a senior chair workshop, but also the idea of chairs that come in from the outside don't know as much as Gavin Buffington, who's been here for 15 years and becomes a chair, although it wasn't quite that long, was it, when he became a chair. I mean, you just know more about the operations, the way in which a schedule of classes is put together. If somebody coming from University of North Carolina, Pembroke, comes in and has to put a schedule together for the first time, or following, whatever. I mean, it does take a little. Can we help you in some way? I guess you don't have to answer the question now, but are there some things coming out of here that, in terms of probably structural prescriptions, that we can help you with? And I'm not sure a mentoring program works the way they're supposed to work. That's another issue as well. People have talked about that. But if there are workshops or other kinds of special things we can do to help you as chairs, we need to hear about them. And I'm still not
Taking the burden of adjunct orientation.
Yeah. That's one.
Could be. Well, folks, we are at our time. Thank you all very much. Pretty lively discussion today.